And as we keep things moving very swiftly here, one thing that I took away from the GMD speech was advocacy. And when it comes to advocacy, it's important that we have institutions who have excellent leadership coming from the very top. And leadership sets an example. And the next gentleman that I would like to introduce has set an example not only for his team at Zenith and many of the institutions he's part of, but also for the financial services sector, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent. The man is also described as the godfather of banking, and that was Forbes Africa that described this next gentleman as that. And under his tutelage, Zenith Bank has become one of the largest banks on the African continent and an internationally recognized institution. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and my privilege, and I would like a very loud round of applause for the founder and chairman of Zenith Bank, Mr. Jim Ovia, CON. Please, let's welcome him to the podium.
I just passed on. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you are all specially welcome this morning. I'll just pass on a very quick correction to, what's your name, please? Okay. Sorry? Tolu? Yes. She tried to elevate us a little bit by saying that we are now the largest bank in Africa. Actually, we expect to be very soon. We're actually the largest bank in Nigeria. In terms of shareholders' funds, the current edition of released Bankers magazine in collaboration with Financial Times put us at number 460 in the world. That's the top 1,000 banks in the world. We are number 460. In terms of shareholders' funds, but put us exactly at number 1 in Nigeria. Okay, good. I should see, where do you have the screen on? We'll have the screen on so that we can see the PowerPoint. But it's also very important for us to start by asking, why do we need to export? We've been exporting oil for many years. Even before oil was being exported, we were exporting cocoa. The first, one of the largest buildings I know in Lagos is called Cocoa House. Cocoa House. And the building, in Lagos, in Ibadan, it's called Cocoa House. It was built with resources from cocoa. Very large building. And we also know a building on Broad Street called Western House. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's Western House. What's the height of that building? About almost 18-story building. Yeah, all the corporates are there. All law firms are there. It was built with resources from cocoa and all that. And of course, our imperial masters, that's the British colonial masters, they had built the 25-story building. Not with oil, because at this time we didn't have in commercial quantity. We're not exporting oil at that time. It was money from cocoa, mineral resources. So we've actually been exporting. But now we want to deep dive into other areas, other sectors of the economy other than oil, hence non-oil export. Let's look at what had made many African countries, European countries very successful. I will look at Yes, the GDP of a number of countries in the world today, we have the US, the UK, France, Japan, China. Most of these countries, they don't have oil. In fact, China doesn't have oil. US has. US has, that's good. Japan doesn't really have oil. But how come they become some of the wealthiest countries in the world? It's because they are doing a great deal of innovation. They are doing a great deal of production, manufactured goods, and services. If we now start looking at the companies, the organizations that are very domiciled in some of these countries, we can see why. One, in terms of information technology and in terms of various resources, in terms of ideas, you have Apple computers, 2.4 trillion in market cap. You have Microsoft, 1.9 trillion in market cap. Alphabet, Google, 1.4 trillion. Tesla, almost 1 trillion. And other healthcare services, Johnson & Johnson, over $500 billion. Then you have Berkshire, you have over $500 billion. And Visa International, over $500 billion. Now, these are not oil related. Could we mimic what they are doing? Could we also create our various non-oil services in these areas? The answer is yes. We're already beginning to achieve that. In Nigeria, we have startup companies, fintech companies. We have Flutterwave, and no, the MD of Flutterwave is probably here. We hear that the valuation is $3 billion, more valuable than many banks in Nigeria today. That is Flutterwave. It's not, they don't have an oil well. They do not have an oil well. They don't. Ideas, intellectual capital, brilliant Nigerians, $3 billion in market cap. OPay, $2 billion in market cap. Interswitch, well above $1 billion. A small company called Kuda, over $500 million. When we say market cap, they are not really listed, but the valuation. Paystack had recently been bought for a value of $200 million. So we don't know the market cap of Paystack because they are not listed. For a technology company to be bought for $200 million, that's probably about the amount you pay to get an oil well. So we could really see it's not just oil or oil well. Technology, intellectual capital, and other aspects of products, manufacturing, telecom, information technology, and telecommunication. That's also very valuable. Those are the areas where our GDP continue to grow. GDP contribution in terms of the area of oil well is not really much. The GDP contribution from oil well was only about 11%, and whereas the balance comes from services and other aspects of the economy. So definitely we need to deep dive into non-oil experts. And GCON Aliko Dangote has rich data in the area of manufacturing because He is also a guru in manufacturing sector, and he will also let us know how we can deep dive into the areas of non-oil export. The central bank governor, we are very pleased, is also here. He has a whole array of statistics of what we need to do, of what central bank have been doing in terms of encouraging Nigeria businesses in the area of non-oil export. Let's look at some African countries: Morocco, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt. Of all these countries, Nigeria's GDP is largest than all. But very slightly, if you are looking at Egypt, if you are looking at South Africa is above 400 billion now. And Egypt is also slightly above 400 billion, catching up with Nigeria. Nigeria definitely is also above 400 billion. But these countries I've mentioned, they do not have as much oil as Nigeria. Nigeria is a member of OPEC, one of the richest countries that produce oil. But very soon, they're going to soon become irrelevant because OPEC is no longer as reliable in terms of, we are not even meeting our quota in production of our own quota for OPEC. Whatever it is, I think, CBN Governor, you have the data for what do we export in oil every year? About how much? 1.8 million barrels per day. And in terms of cash, what does that give per annum? Okay, let's assume we know. Let's assume we know. That figure is nowhere near, if you extrapolate, near the valuation of, is nowhere near the valuation of Google. Google doesn't have land for oil. It doesn't have anything to do with the valuation of Amazon. They don't have oil. They don't have anything to do with the valuation of Microsoft. All these organizations I'm listing, they are intellectual capital. But we have so many brilliant young boys and girls who are beginning to demonstrate we could do this in Nigeria if we support them. So, Mr. Governor, I'm happy you are here. Sometime in the past, there were issues about some of these fintech that you and your team need to give them more support, more encouragement in terms of either resources or in terms of financing, funding, or whatever you need to do. Not as much as the oil companies we need, but definitely we now know these are the areas that will make Nigeria to grow and do exceedingly very well. Now, I've been told to just present a goodwill message, not to make any elaborate detailed presentations. That will be done by my very good friend, GCON Aliko Dangote, #1 manufacturer in the country, has a lot of businesses, many of which are being exported. When he first arrived, we visited the floating lounge to show him some of his products that are already currently being exported. He's enviably in the best position to do that, not me. My job is a goodwill message, and at this point, I want to welcome you guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
And please, once again, let's use applause to usher the founder and chairman of Zenith Bank PLC, Mr. Jim Ovia, CON, back to his table. Please, let's keep the applause going for him.